everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of the Heartpanorama podcast and also a new season of this podcast as I was on a hiatus for a few months. I'm your host Michelle, and today I will talk about your assumptions about me. Just a quick reminder, please know that any mentions of friends, products, or services in this podcast are only included for discussion purposes and are not paid or sponsored. So last month, I asked my followers on Twitter to comment their assumptions about me, and most of them are my mutuals. So thank you for commenting any assumptions, even though you pretty much know me. And I want to start with the assumption that my friend Luna TK commented, because she's out of all the mutuals, she's the one who knows me the best. And I think it was quite hard for her to figure out a new assumption about me because she actually knows me already. So she said she feels like I'm one of those people that is always on time, if not early, to things. And I must admit, most of my life I've been always the first one to show up at places, or even early to things, like 10 minutes early, just to not be the last one to arrive. But at some point, I think when I was around 18 or 19 and I started studying, for example, the whole thing shifted. So when there are important things, I still try to show up on time. But when there's like meetings with friends and so on, I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter if I arrive 5 minutes late, because nowadays you can text them and say, okay, my bus arrives 2 minutes later or so, and you don't have to stress yourself anymore. But when I was younger, I pretty much stressed myself and tried to be on time or be the first one to arrive. So yes, pretty much true, but it depends nowadays. My friend Abby commented two things. I will address them one by one. So she commented, I feel you're a super organized person. And I can't count how many times people have told me this, that they think I'm really organized. And to a certain degree, I am. But also here it depends. But when it comes to work, for example, or when I was still studying, I was really organized and tried to plan everything out so I wouldn't miss anything. And at home, it also depends. So for example, when I plan my podcasts, of course, I try to plan everything out like a project. And I think last week also Luna TK told me she feels like I'm really organized with these things. And I try to be, but when it comes to home stuff like doing laundry or so on, and anything in the household, I'm not that organized. I tried to be, or at least I tried to pretend to be when I was younger. So whenever I had friends over, I cleaned up everything so they thought I was always that organized, but I actually only was that organized when I had guests over. So it was kind of like how do I describe it best? It was kind of like an occasional thing. So most times I am organized, but also here it doesn't apply to all the things in my life. Abby's second comment was, I'm the mom figure of the group. And I think, Abby, that you are talking about our squad, but usually also in other groups I'm described as the mom friend. I think it's my nature to try to care for everyone and try to make sure that everyone is all right, I guess. And I also got a postcard of one of my friends, and that said that I was the mom of the group. So I think your assumption is quite right. But yeah, I don't know if that's a good image to have. But I think I interpret it as positive. So the next assumption was by Ferry, and she said, I'm very organized, so I have several notebooks or apps where I write down schedules, order of the day type of things often. And that kind of is part of the other assumption that I'm quite organized. So yes, I do have a lot of notebooks. I am obsessed with notebooks and calendars. And I think when I was in 10th grade, I had like 3 calendars. I have no idea why I did have so many, but I was kind of obsessed with putting all my appointments into the calendar and writing stuff down. But now I'm trying to use less paper. So I started out working a full-time job in June, and I first started out with writing down my tasks, and I realized that it was quite inefficient because whenever I was done with stuff, I could put a check on it and it was done, but there were still things on the list that weren't done yet, but took a few more days to be completed. And I was quite annoyed that I didn't have quite the overview I wish I had. So I had to renew all these to-do lists. And I realized that this took a lot of time because I had to write down everything again and again. And also the same problem occurred all over again. So I found an app where I could actually write down my to-do list and say, this is Monday, these are the tasks for Monday, but if I don't finish 2 of these tasks, I can move them to Tuesday, for example. So now I'm trying out this app called Tick. And I think there are a lot of other apps that do the same thing, but I just started out with this one, and I think I've been using this for 2 weeks now, and I'm pretty happy with it. But of course I can't write down every single thing, just the major stuff, but I'm trying to keep this overview here, and it helps me not use too much paper anymore. So yeah, I don't know if I have several apps, because this is pretty much the only app I have to write down to-do lists. But when I was writing my master thesis, I also had this app called Forest, where you could track how long you've been concentrating on stuff and not looking at your phone. So I would schedule in a study session of about 2 hours, and then there are these different trees that you could choose from, and then they would grow. And the more you concentrate on your work, the more trees you get in your forest. So I was quite obsessed with this one, but now I don't use it anymore because obviously I'm done with my studies and I don't need it anymore. So yeah, the assumption again was quite accurate. So I have 2 more assumptions by my friend Ro. And the first one she commented was that she assumed that I had really good grades in school and that I knew almost right away what I wanted to study at college. To the first part about the good grades, I did have good grades, and in elementary school I was actually the best in my class. And then I went to gymnasium. That's the type of school where you go when you have the best grades. And I was a bit intimidated by everyone else because they were just as good as I was, or even better. So I was challenged more, but I still kept up my grades and had between 1s and 3s. So the worst grade I ever had was a 4, and in Germany 1 is the best and 6 is the worst. So I was trying to keep it between 1 and 4. And coming to the part of the assumption that I almost knew right away what I wanted to study. The almost is the key word here, because initially I wanted to do something more design related. I wanted to be an art director or a creative director and do something about media design and so on. So I was playing with that idea, but then I actually seriously took the time and looked at what subjects my university in my hometown offered. So I stumbled upon the subject that I studied then at the end, and that was communication science when you translate it. And then I finally got to study communication science with economics as a minor, and then in my master's I studied media management, which is basically both the subjects. And I decided to study my master's before I decided what kind of bachelor subject I wanted to study. So at 16 and a half, I already knew what I wanted to study in my master's. So again, you were quite right about this. And I did take some time to think about if I really wanted to do this, but then I made the right decision and followed through, so I didn't have to change my subject at university. And I know a few people who started studying with me in the same subject, but then changed their subject because they weren't content with their choice. And I'm pretty glad that I didn't have to do this, because that would have been such a hassle. And I'm still happy with what I studied, so I just try to find out what actual job I can do with this. At the moment, I'm working at a TV licensing firm as an assistant, and it's quite interesting, but it's not what I want to do for the next 40 years. So I'm still trying to figure that out. Okay, and the last assumption, also by row, is that I took some course or class in graphic design since my podcast layouts have such a nice aesthetic. First of all, thank you so much. I'm trying to keep up with it. And talking about graphic design, so I initially thought about studying graphic design or media design. And when I didn't, I took a course that was optional at university, where I took a course in the basics of Photoshop, and also, what was the other one? I think Quark Express, which is basically the same, or not the same program, but a similar program to InDesign. So I did learn some basic stuff of these, and I don't have Photoshop on my computer at home, but I use a program that is a free version that has a lot of the same features. So it's called GIMP, and it pretty much fulfills everything I need for my home usage and for my podcast. So I try to create images that are aesthetically pleasing in my point of view, so I hope they please you as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I didn't think I would talk so much about these few assumptions, but thank you to everyone who commented. It helped me a lot. And I found it quite funny that most of the assumptions were right. Or wait a second, I think all of the assumptions were right to a certain extent. So it's quite interesting to see how much of an open book I am. But maybe next time some people who don't know me that well will comment as well. So I might do that at some point in the future again. So that was the first episode of season 2 of Heartpanorama, the podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and please like and leave a comment if you like this podcast and you want to say something about it or add something, maybe a few assumptions that I can comment on below. Also, subscribe and activate your notification bell to stay tuned for future episodes. And until next time, believe in yourself and do what you love. Take care. Bye.